Hello everyone and welcome back to Emily's Writing Club. Let's start with Happy New Year to everyone. I don't know why, but I feel like 2025 is going to be my year. Finger crossed. I hope you're doing amazing, that your new year was great, that you find resolutions for you. And talking about resolution, this video is going to be about how to read more in 2025. I know that it tends to be a resolution that a lot of people take, and that can be a little overwhelming to achieve, and I'm here to help you with this. Knowing that all those advice are coming from someone who used to hate reading. I used to hate reading. I was like, no, why would I read when I can have the movie version? Why would I read when I can play video games? It's so much more fun. Why would I read? And now you see me having a book talk, having a podcast about reading and writing. A lot of things have changed, and I'm thinking that maybe with my experience, I can help you find your way through your new resolution for 2025. For those who are not aware of it, I'm leaving for Atlanta at the end of this month, so all of this is going to be moving. I'm going to be moving, but the podcast is still alive. We're going to keep talking about books. Before we start, I wanted to share a little bit of my resolutions because I think it can resonate with a lot of people. I know that I tend to be really close in terms of relationship and friendship. It's just like sometimes I'm scared of people abandoning me, and when I'm in this state of mind, I don't fully love people, which I think is a little sad. And I decided that for 2025 I would dare to love people, and if I'm hurt, that it's fucking okay because it's part of life, and if I don't get hurt, I'm not gonna live. So it's going to be me getting out slowly out of my little bubble, and we'll see how it'll go. I have other resolutions like remembering birthdays. I'm really bad at remembering birthdays. One of my new resolutions is also to do more art. I want to write, I want to draw. I actually got myself a second-hand iPad, a mini iPad, and I started drawing back again. I wanted to show it to you. Look guys, I'm so happy. I don't know if we can see well. I was working on, I think you call it values, where the shadow goes. Apart from drawing, I'm thinking of making maybe a little bit of music. For those who don't know, I like to sing and I play a little bit of instruments here and there. But if I'm fully honest, it's been a long time that I haven't played or made any covers or anything, and I want to do this more because I miss singing, and it could be a great way to train my voice also because I don't train it enough, and my voice is a great tool and I want to take care of it. So what other art do I intend to go into? So writing, of course. Will 2025 be the year where I finish my book? Let's hope so. Let's hope so. Reading more is also part of my resolutions. My dad gifted me for this new year a reading tablet, a Kobo tablet, and I'm in love with it. I have never read this fast. So those are all the resolutions I have for this year, and if one of yours is reading more, let's get into the video. First thing first, I used to be someone who hated reading. I didn't like reading. For me, it was a waste of time because I don't have time to read. I don't have the energy to read. I don't like reading. I really thought I didn't like reading until I met a friend who was like, I love reading. And I admired her for this, and I was like, wait, actually reading kind of looks cool. So yeah, I really was a sheep and I just followed. She was just like, reading is cool. And I was like, okay, I'm gonna try again. And I tried again. And now I could say that I'm a bookworm. I used to hate reading, and today I read so much, and reading is so much part of my lifestyle right now. So I'd like to think that my experience makes my advice suitable for kind of everyone. If you're used to reading but want to read more, those advice, you might know most of them, but maybe having a little reminder can help you. And for those who don't like reading and know that reading is good for them and they want to read more, or just they like to read but they never find the time or something, those advice will be suited for you. Because I used to hate reading, so why can't you love reading now? Okay, the first thing that I wanted to talk about is let's stop associating reading with classics. You don't have to read classics. You don't have to read everything that everyone is reading or everything that your teacher is telling you to read. Read what makes you happy. And I made a little list of things that people tend to be like, that's not reading, when it is, just so that you guys understand, it is reading. Reading manga is reading. Reading romance is reading. Reading comics is reading. Reading ebooks is reading. You read whatever you like. At the moment where you like it, it's all that matter. We'll see into the other points. It's not only all that matter, but it really helps for you to read more. Don't read just the books that people tell you to read. If you don't enjoy a book, you don't have to read it. It's okay. And if you go for a book you don't like, you're never gonna read it. Let's be honest. So my first advice is let's deconstruct this idea that reading is just about classic. Reading is about big books. Reading is about books without images. No, if you want to read a child's book, read a child's book. I don't care. It's a book. It has a story in it. That's all that matters. If reading is not fun for you in the first place, you're never going to start reading. So really pick what you want to read. And if you don't know what to read, my second advice would be to find what you like. It can be a little bit difficult. You can try things here and there. And if you don't like it, it's okay. You just let it go and you find something else. You can even go on Book Talk and find some books recommendations that you will find. There are so many. They will tell you a little bit about the story, and then you'll be able to figure out if you want to read this book, if you want to read another. It's still a great way to find recommendations. And since I started to understand what I liked, I never stopped reading. Today, I'm a big fantasy girly. I love fantasy. I know that if I read too much fantasy, it can be too much for me, and sometimes I need a break and just go for romance or stuff. Once you know how you work with reading, once you know what you like, it's going to be much more easier to read. My next advice for you would be to set achievable goals. And achievable is really important because if they're not achievable, you're going to be unmotivated really fast. And let's be honest, if we want this goal to be achievable throughout 2025, we need to be motivated from the start and not just here and there. So keep it achievable, no stress. This year, I also decided to change from Goodreads to Storygraph. It is a Black women-owned business, and I wanted to support more of Black women-owned business, knowing that Goodreads, if I'm correct, is still owned by Jeff Bezos, and I think he has enough money. So I was like, you know what? If I have to support a business, probably better if I go for a Storygraph. From my experience with it, I feel like it's a little bit better. You have the same challenges and more. If you want, you can export your Goodreads data into the app. On this app, you can set a goal of how many books you want to read during the year. And I think it's a great way for you to start, to just have a goal. And it's important for it to be achievable. If your goal is just one book for 2025, then make it just one book for 2025. Who cares? What's important is that it is achievable for you, that it means a lot to you, and if it's just one book, it's already just fine. My next advice would be make reading visible. It's a little weird said like this, but you're going to understand. So basically last year I've read Atomic Habits, and this book was really interesting because it made me learn a lot of things about myself and how I work in terms of habits. One of the way my brain works is that I'm going to be doing what's in front of me. I have a hard time focusing and having a list of things in my head to do. And sometimes I will do to-do lists, but if I don't have the to-do list right behind my eyes, I will not think about it, I will not see it, and I will not do what's on the list. The list will be lost and I will never do it again. In this book, they talk about one advice that is really, really cool. It's to make things visible. So if you want to eat more fruits, then make sure that you have a bowl of fruit on your table that is accessible and that all the easy eating sugary cakes and stuff are in a drawer, more difficult to access. With reading, it's the same thing. If you want to read a little bit every day, think when you make your bed in the morning to put a book on your bed, not on the bedside table, on the bed. Like this, when you go to bed, if you want to sleep, you have to pull your book aside, and just having a contact with the book is going to be like, okay, I have to read. When the book is on the side table, you see it, but you don't pick it up. And sometimes you'll be like, I'll be reading tomorrow. When you go to bed and you have it in your hands, it's more like, okay, let's read a few pages, like 5 pages. And it's easier to see it and to recognize it and see that it's here rather than have it on the bedside table and with time you'll just forget that it's here. In the book, they talk a lot about the 4 steps of creating habits. So cue, we kind of talked about it. It's like what is going to launch the habit. And if what launches the habit is seeing the book on your bed, then the cue is visible, which is really, really important. The first step, cue, must be visible. Then the second one is craving. And craving has to be attractive. I know that how I do it is I make sure that I have a good space to read. The space I read in is really comfortable. Like this, it's kind of like romanticizing it. And I think it works for so many things. Just romanticizing the stuff you have a hard time doing makes it way easier to do it because it becomes attractive and you want to do it because it looks good, because it feels good. Then the next step is to make it easy. Again, it's related to the first advice. Choose a book that you want to read. You can also be easier for you depending on how you work. Read with others, not especially the person next to you, but you know that one of your friends is also reading. So you use this time to read together. This could be an amazing way. I know that when I started reading, it was really because I wanted to talk with people. What I love about reading is not just the fact of reading. I love reading, but I think I love even more sharing those stories with people and having friends to talk about those books. It could also fit in attractive and easy. It kind of fits in both. Having someone to talk to about those books make it easier to read, because you're just like, it's kind of this thing of fear of missing out, but with books. Oh, but I want to know what happens in the story so that I can talk about it with my friends. And I think that's a way to make it easier and more attractive. And if the response is easy, then you have less efforts to make to have this habit, and then the habit is going to come easier than if the book was like on a shelf somewhere. Here you have it in front of you, you take it, it's over. Then the last step is the reward, and the reward has to be satisfying. The objective of the reward is to make you want to do it all over again. You can make it satisfying by having a tracker of how much you read, because sometimes you read just a few pages here and there and you don't feel like moving forward, but you've read, and that's already a good start. And having a tracker of, here I read this day and this day and this day, or I read this amount of pages this day and this amount of pages this day, then it will show you that you're moving forward and will motivate you to continue. But if tracking is not your thing, I know I have a hard time with tracking because it feels like another step, more things to think about, and I don't really enjoy that. You can find other ways to make it satisfying. One of the things that I like to do is go on TikTok and find TikToks that talk about those books and make jokes about those books. When you see those TikToks, you want to relate to it. You want to understand. And if you want to understand, you need to read the book. So it kind of motivates you. And it's satisfying once you finish the book to go on those TikToks and understand them and joke with everyone and understand the comments and understand the entire story. And then it makes so much sense to you. Just a little parenthesis, it doesn't mean that every book on TikTok is good, that you should read every book on TikTok. I know that I have a few issues, let's say, with some authors. There are a lot of things that I don't like in many famous books. It just depends on your values and your morals. I know that I have a hard time with Colleen Hoover, Sarah G. Maas, and of course J.K. Rowling. We've seen how she acts on Twitter. I think someone should remove the app from her hands. It's important for me to be aligned with the values of the author I read, because I'm gonna give them my money. And also for my mental health, because some of those books, I don't want to talk about It Ends With Us again. I've read it when I didn't know about her. So much things were wrong in it, so much things, but I've talked about it so many times during the last year on YouTube, so those who know, you know. But if you're careful of what you read, and if you understand a little bit more about the authors, I think you can find a lot of great things on TikTok. But in general, those are the 4 points. Cue, make it visible. Craving, make it attractive. Response, make it easy, and reward, make it satisfying. If you have those 4 things for reading, it's gonna help you. You'll be able to do it over and over again and make reading a habit, which is going to help you achieve your goals of reading more. My next advice now would be to learn to put a book aside when you don't like it. Do you know how many books there is out there? Wait, let me check actually. I wanna know. Okay, I don't know if I'm gonna be able to read this, but let's try it. There is 158,464,880 unique books in the world. Oh, in 2023. It was in 2023. And 2.2 million titles are published every year, which is moving really fast, all right? So now that you have this in mind, just think, you're gonna start reading a book. You don't like it and you force your way through. You arrive at the end, you're probably going to be disappointed. All this time you spent reading this book, you could have been reading another book. And then you're gonna die one day and be like, I should have read another book instead of reading this one. Do you realize how many books it is? You will never have the time to read all the books you want to read. So knowing this, read what you like, and if you don't like a book, put it aside. I swear. From my experience, when you read and push yourself to read, you're gonna end up not reading, end up in a reading slump. And once you're in a reading slump, it's really hard to get out. And you feel like you don't like reading anymore. When it's not that you don't like reading, it's just that you picked the wrong book. Read the books you want to read. Read the books that makes you happy. Read the books that makes you excited. Final advice. Don't stress yourself. Don't stress yourself to read 200 books in 2025, all right? Let's say you want to go for a marathon. You want to do a marathon this year, and you start doing a full marathon on your own right now. On the 1st of January, you just decided for the new year. You're gonna hurt yourself. Your body is not used to it. You're gonna hurt yourself at some point. You are not ready for this. Your body was not ready for this. It's the same thing with reading. If you don't go step by step, you're gonna hurt yourself. You're not gonna go until the end of your objective because it's going to be too much. Do what's best for you. I am a slow reader because I tend to focus on every sentences and I want to feel how pretty they sound. It's really important for me. And also, just a reminder, some people are paid to read, okay? They're critiques and stuff. So many people read many books because they have the time to do so. If you don't have this time, it's fine, all right? If you want to be a slow reader and enjoy every line, then be a slow reader, but don't stress yourself because you don't read as much as others. Now that we went over all of this, and I wanted to talk about a few books that you can start with if you're not a big reader. I'm going to try to give you a few books to start with depending on what you like. I'm going to try to have the best selection possible. Knowing that I read a lot of fantasy, it is possible that you don't find what you like in the books that I'm going to provide here. But remember, if it doesn't work, you put it aside and you go find another book, all right? Don't try reading it just because I said it was a good thing to start with. It's a good thing to start with from my point of view. If it's not for you, it's fine. First, one series that I really enjoyed was the Cruel Prince series. It is pretty easy to read. Most of my friends who've read it said that they read it in a few days. Again, no pressure. If you have to take a month or the full year to read one book, it's just fine. You follow Jude, who is a human and has been taken into a fairy world for some reason that you're going to understand pretty fast because it's in the first chapter. Her character development is kind of like she is sick of being a victim because as a human she doesn't have the same power as fairies, and without the abilities that fairies has, she's going to find a form of power, and there's going to be like a lot of things about the fights for the crown and for power. It's also a romantasy, so you follow her romance. It's an enemy to lovers for those who like that. There's going to be a lot of fights and scheming. There's a very specific detail that I love about this story. I cannot spoil it because it's going to spoil the end of the first book, but know that when you read the end of the first book, you're like, oh my gosh, she's so clever. They're super famous on TikTok. So if you want a book that is well known on TikTok and you're motivated by TikToks and sharing TikToks with others afterwards, I think this one could be a great way to start. Then these are my favorite series of all time. I started reading Six of Crows when I was in high school and I stopped because I didn't understand anything about the universe and a friend of mine recommended it to me. But if I have to be honest, I would recommend you to start with the Shadow and Bone if you're not a big reader. The story is a little slower, but I think it's more digestible. You have then the Six of Crows. The Six of Crows happens after those books. And then you have another series and it's King of Scars. So you have a trilogy, a duology, and another duology in the same universe. But Six of Crows and Crooked Kingdom are my favorite books for the representation it gives, for how lovely the relationship with the characters are. And again, they're pretty famous on TikTok. I would recommend to start with those because of the language and the vocabulary in the book related to the fantasy world. I think that's what stopped me at the beginning of Six of Crows when I was in high school. It's because I didn't understand enough of the vocabulary. Then a very simple one, still in fantasy, kind of fantasy like Greek mythology, but the Percy Jackson are really easy to read. The main character is fun to follow. So in general, when the characters are fun to follow, you want to know the rest of the story. I feel like there's enough happening for you not to be bored. Then if we leave fantasy for a little, we have Atomic Habits. I talked about it a little bit. If you want a book for self-improvement, I think it's a great book. It might not be fun to read though. If you want something fun to read, that's not the thing you should start with. But if you want to improve yourself and read regularly and have, like, for example, you want to read 5 pages a day, I think this book is good because the chapters are short. You have a lot of things that are said and that you might take into account to improve your habits, and it can actually help you afterwards to make reading a habit. Then if we go into books with social dimensions underlined by stories, I have those 2 books that I would recommend. Queenie is a book that is going to follow this black woman living in the UK and everything she faces, from sexism to racism, and how she's going to deal with it. It's a really tough story though. I think she has to go through therapy, she has to go through a lot, but I think it's important to highlight Queenie's story. She's such a powerful character and I love her character development at the end. You cannot be anything else than proud of her and from how far she goes. There's also so much about friendship and family. I loved her friends. Her friends are amazing. You're gonna see it. Her friends are amazing. Okay, there's this one sentence at the end of the book that I read every time. I don't know why I can't find the sentence again, but I think I remember it words for words because I've repeated it so many times. The sentence is, "It must be so easy to be so detached from a life that someone like me actually has to live." The next one is The Seven Husbands of Evelyn Hugo, and you follow Evelyn, who wants to be an actress in Hollywood, and she's going to do it because she is motivated and she is ready to do anything, even marry men on the way to use them. There's so much about how complex humans are. She is a really complex character that you can definitely relate to. There's this sentence, I think it's at the very end of the book, and I hope that it can help you want to read it. Okay, listen to this. Listen to this. Doesn't it bother you that your husbands have become such a headline story, so often mentioned, that they have nearly eclipsed your work and yourself? That all anyone talks about when they talk about you are the 7 husbands of Evelyn Hugo. No, she told me, because they're just husbands, and I am Evelyn Hugo. And anyway, I think once people know the truth, they will be more interested in my wife. Here you have it. Evelyn is such an active character. If you want to start reading, it's the perfect book to start with. Well, according to me, maybe it's not going to be, but I read it so fast. I was like, I want to know the rest. I want to know the rest. How does she do it? How does she do it? How does she go through this? I want to know. I want to know. I want to know. And it's so fast to read because she's so active all the time. It's heartbreaking. The ending is mortifying. There are so many things said. Oh, guys, you really need to read it. The characters in this book are not heroic. They're just human. So if you want to start with a very active book, you have this one. Then I have one last that I wanted to present to you. It is A Good Girl's Guide to Murder. Again, it's a very famous book on TikTok. So if you want to find content, actually, I think all the books that I presented are pretty famous on TikTok and you're going to find a few videos on it. But I think A Good Girl's Guide to Murder was really cool to read because it's kind of like Evelyn Hugo. It was so fast to read. I didn't even feel the book going. Like I just read it all the way through. The way it's written, I think, helps you really to read it fast. I've never read a book this fast, I think. And it's not the type of book that I usually read, so I would definitely recommend. Let me read the back of the book. It's probably going to be better than me trying to explain the book. The case is closed. 5 years ago, schoolgirl Andy Bell was murdered by Sal Sy. The police know he did it. Everyone in town knows he did it. But having grown up in the same small town that was consumed by the murder, Pippa Fitz-Amobi isn't so sure. When she chooses the case as the topic for her final, she starts to uncover secrets that someone in town desperately wants to stay hidden. And if the real killer is still out there, how far will they go to keep Pip from the truth? Honestly, I really liked it. The love interest is really cute. Go for it. Go for it. If you want some comic book recommendations, I would recommend to go watch the books that I've read in 2024. It might interest you. But I hope this video helped you to read more for 2025 and that you'll be able to read more for this year, that you're going to enjoy it. And yeah, I will, I guess, see you next year. So I'll probably see you soon on internet. Until then, take care of yourself, be kind to yourself, and I will see you soon.